G'day, welcome back. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos and built up quite a collection of new pickups to get through. So let's not waste any time. Let's do the fast version. So recently I found a guy selling Laserdisc really cheap and I could not refuse. There's been a lot of titles that I've always wanted to get in my collection but just haven't been available in Australia, and titles like The Three Amigos, which is I've been a big fan of. Yeah, I'm just super stoked to get this. It is pan and scan, but you know, this is the kind of movie that was a TV movie at the time. I believe it was on HBO. Yeah, so it doesn't really bother me that it's still beautiful digital sound, Martin Short, Chevy Chase, and of course Steve Martin. And it's a lovely picture, and I'm really glad to get a Japanese disc, but you know, still very happy. And another one that I loved when I was a kid growing up, that I wanted to show my kids too, is Adventures in Babysitting, and they loved it. They had a good time. This is Aladdin number 2, Return of Jafar. I got this because I'm trying to get all the Aladdins. I've got number 3, which is Prince of Thieves, which is where they reintroduce Robin Williams. But this one has, but he's not written anywhere on the disc. So they weren't really excited about not having Robin Williams. Well, it's definitely digital sound. I'll check it out when I watch it. Invasion USA. This is what I was talking about when I say I get bored of some special effects movies after a while. John Wick is a good example of that, where by the third movie I was getting a bit over the whole choreographed kind of moves and stuff like that. And it was the same with this. By the end of the movie I was getting, believe it or not, sick of explosion. And then look over there, look over there. You're like, oh god, another one, you know? It just becomes very... you don't get involved in it, and it becomes explosions for the sake of explosions. Having said that about John Wick, before you start throwing in the comments, number 3 was awesome just for the dog part alone. I do love that. Anyway, Richie Rich. This is I don't think this is widescreen, but it is digital sound. The kids and my partner like it. This one my partner really enjoyed too. She's a big fan of the Whoopi Goldberg films, as I mentioned in previous videos. This is a really lovely film about a pool expert who needs to raise money to look after her kids. Some cool pool scenes, and the supporting cast is really cool, and it's cool, you know. Oh, speaking of cool, Easy Rider. I was so rapt to find this. When I found this movie first off, I was about 18 or 19, and I watched it glued to the screen, because especially the music too really had me hooked, and the atmosphere and the beautiful photography. Really wanted to get a copy on Laserdisc eventually. Collector's edition, widescreen with commentaries on it. Dennis Hopper's on the phone the whole time. But next up we have Hackers. This is a cool movie. Again, another one I really liked growing up. I guess, you know, just like Electric Dreams and a lot of other computer nerd movies, I got sucked in. And now I just like to watch it because it's a bit of a laugh. Fisher Stevens, yeah, from Short Circuit, is the bad guy in this, which is brilliant. And I love the philosophy behind it. Always did, you know, and yeah. This was an amazing film. Spike Lee directed it, and it's a story of the Million Man March. There was a big march. I didn't even know about this, by the way. 1995, I was in year 10, and I really wasn't paying attention too much in, you know, world affairs. And although I do remember the name Million Man March, but most of all, it's a character film. It's about studying the characters and learning about the characters. To be honest, this is probably my favourite Spike Lee film so far. I've still got to see a few more of his films, but I'm really enjoying Spike Lee. Anyway, now the first of the music discs is Celine Dion. She was promoting this album, Colour My Love. I thought the music was really cool at the time, and my dad used to have it on often when he would cook dinner and stuff, and I would listen to it while I was banging away on the computer, and I didn't hate it, you know, so I thought, well, hey, it's cheap, why not? Okay, next one. This came out of my I need to watch pile, and it took me a while to get through to it, but I'm glad I did. It's really cool little film, very low budget, you know, low on the, nothing special on the acting, but a good storyline nonetheless, and the suspense is okay too. The screamers themselves are pretty cool. I think once they evolved into the second stage, third stage and stuff like that, I didn't really follow that as much as the initial screamers going through. I thought that was really cool. Next up we have Somebody Has to Shoot the Picture. This is about a inmate who's on death row, and as the movie goes on, more and more evidence makes you not too sure about whether or not he committed the murders, and you know, it gives you gets you right on the edge of the seat about whether the governor's going to make the call before they pull the switch. And I gotta say, Roy Schneider is brilliant at the end of this film. He really emotionally shakes you up watching this, I feel. Good film. Alright, next up we have The Pride and the Passion. This is a Stanley Kramer film. Everyone knows Stanley Kramer from Mad Mad World, and many others, of course. But yeah, Cary Grant, Frank Sinatra, and Sophia Loren. And I saw it on the cover and I was like, holy moly, I've got to see this. Cary Grant, Sophia Loren, and Frank Sinatra are some of my favourite actors of that era. And to see them all in one picture, I thought, oh, this has got to be a gem. This isn't the best film. Frank Sinatra's accent is laughable and it really drags you out of the movie. The relationships were sometimes felt a little bit forced between Cary Grant and Sophia Loren. During the time of making this movie, Cary Grant had fallen head over heels for Sophia Loren. And there's another movie they did together called Houseboat, which is right after they did this, when they became a bit more friendly. But during the time while this was made, it was just a big mess. Moving on, we have Stallone in Lockup. This is directed by John Flynn, but it also has Donald Sutherland as the warden. It's a weak movie, but again, Stallone, to get the Stallone movies. But it's okay, it's still a dumb, fun, it's better than an arm wrestling movie at least. Tom Sizemore, is it? Yeah, Tom Sizemore is in this as well. This is pan and scan, sadly, and digital sound. Alright, here we go, this is a good one. Rock and Roll High School. This was a fun movie. I'm not too sure if this was a high school movie with the Ramones or a Ramones movie with high school. Besides the lead actress, Riff Randall, besides her, I thoroughly enjoyed the film. You know, where she goes, oh, I wrote a song for the Ramones, you know. I love that it's a special edition. So yeah, glad to have this one. Next up we have The Misfits. I'm trying to learn about John Huston films. I've been taught that John Huston is quite the director. And some of his films I've been watching have been magnificent, but I'm still quite new at it. And I thought I would enjoy this one because it's three big names in filmmaking: Montgomery Clift, Marilyn Monroe, and Clark Gable. 2 out of 3 of them, this was their last film. This is widescreen with digital sound. This is actually a really nice pressing. I really like these John Huston collection discs. It makes it really easy for me to spot. Anyway, we have Leviathan. Good cast with Ernie Hudson and Peter Weller and a lot of other, got an error I think. $1 Billion Brain, which is a Michael Caine 60s spy movie with all the trimmings, very 60s and very Michael Caine-ish. I love it. This is just pan and scan, but it does have a nice digital soundtrack because it is a decent film and it's very 60s, which I love. Very much like in like Flint or James Bond, of course, and stuff. And Michael Caine doing similar kind of role to Get Carter, you know, don't take no crap kind of Michael Caine. Another music disc. This is the greatest hits of Lionel Richie. This is Mouse Hunt with Nathan Lane and Lee Evans, who was in Something About Mary, but my partner absolutely loves it. This is Prince's Diamonds and Pearls Laserdisc. I wasn't that blown away by this. The first third of the disc is pretty good. You get what you expect. You get a bit of Cream, you get a bit of Get Off, you get a bit of Diamonds and Pearls, etc. What you don't get is any more Prince for the next 2/3 of the disc. It's other bands and other artists that Prince was either supporting or worked with him or something like that, and it's not that great. Okay, next up we have The New Kids. This is pan and scan and analog, sadly, but cool little B film. James Spader is the bad guy. I gotta tell you, he plays a role that's not your usual tough guy, bad guy kind of role. James Spader's always been a bit out. As far as B movies go, they have some great. There's a good action scene towards the end, which is what you want. It was okay. Okay, next up we have Bob Marley in concert, and doing a lot of his big hits, but a lot of it isn't. And I don't know, if you like Bob Marley's greatest hits and you've already listened to Exodus and stuff like that, this is pretty cool to open your mind up to some of the other cool Bob Marley stuff, and just really sets a nice vibe in your house if you're having mates over and you want some background music, and it just really nice energy in the house. Okay, next up we have James Cagney in Billy Wilder's 1, 2, 3. I really like Billy Wilder he makes the, or I've talked about him before when I did the Kiss Me Stupid disc, and this was pretty good. I actually didn't like this as much as Kiss Me Stupid, I guess. The idea was great about a coke salesman selling coke to Russians. The boss's daughter falls in love with a Russian, and he's like, oh no, I'm going to lose my job if the boss catches his daughter dating a Russian. James Cagney's fun. I've really started to come round to James Cagney. It took me a while. Widescreen, digital sound, really lovely pressing of this film. Black and white looks so good on Laserdisc for some reason. Next up is Give My Regards to Broad Street. Now, I bought this because I thought it was a music disc, but it turns out Paul McCartney made a movie. Not a movie you want to watch at all, but the collection of music on this is pretty good. There's a song on this called Wanderlust, which I hadn't heard before, which is a really cool song. But yeah, some great tributes back to the Beatles, and not really well acted at all, but nonetheless, I give him props for trying, and I'm glad to have this disc. Okay, next up is the greatest hits of Billy Joel. Quite a cool little cover, eh? It's called The Photo Album, and that's why I look like those old 1980s photo albums back then. Next up is Rock and Roll, The Greatest Hits. This is 1972. I know there's some T-Rex on this, Rod Stewart. And as you can see back here, I've got a whole bunch of these Rock and Roll Greatest Years. The whole 60s, I'm just trying to chase after the 70s now. And I really like how they put little bits of information about the artist along the bottom of the screen while the video's playing. Alright, this is the one I was talking about in that last video. I actually had bought the disc but hadn't watched it. This is A Simple Plan, and this is a widescreen film with Sam Raimi directed it. Not AC3 or anything like that, even though it's a late release. I think they're starting to make some cutbacks by that time. And alright, next up we have Top Dog, which is another one like K-9 and Turner and Hooch and all those kind of films. But this time it's just Chuck Norris with the dog. I'm sure the kids would like that. Next up we have probably my now most valuable disc. It doesn't have an Obi, I know, but it is Mission Impossible 2, and I know this is a very sought after late release disc. I've put it on once to just test it, but I haven't watched the movie yet. I will get around to watching it very shortly. Next up is another one I haven't seen yet. James Cagney with Angels with Dirty Faces. This is I'm getting a whole bunch of these old school classic films, RKO classics or Warner classics and stuff like that, trying to get off the old beaten path when it comes to MGM classics. Okay, this one's called Crazy People. This is Dudley Moore and Daryl Hannah. So they start advertising campaigns that are quite successful, and basically it takes a crazy person to be able to write a, successful advertising campaign. Alright, next up we have Tucker, The Man in His Dream, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. I actually found out about this film because it was mentioned in the book that came with the Star Wars Definitive Edition. So I thought, I'll get the movie and have a look, and the car itself is a fascinating piece of technology, so yeah, it should make an interesting film when I get around to watching it eventually. And I found a few cheap horror ones in there as well, and I thought, hey, I'll give it a go. And I've often seen this cover when I went to video shops and went, wow, that looks freaky, so I'll give it a go and see how it is. David Lynch's classic Eraserhead. I've been meaning to get around to watching this one for ages. We talked about it on Spencer's live stream one time, and ever since then I've just had this fascination about giving it a bash. This is widescreen with digital sound, and this is a classic, Small Soldiers. Glad to have this on Laserdisc finally. It's lovely pressing in Japanese. Even though it is Japanese, it has subtitles that are out of the screen. So, Okay, it looks like I had some sound issues then, but we're all fixed again now. So this is Eddie, another pickup for my partner, where she takes over an NBA team, widescreen, digital sound. Kind of late release-ish, you know. Another one I've been chasing for a bit is IQ, Tim Robbins, Meg Ryan, and Walter Matthau as Albert Einstein. And it's a cute little, you know, romantic comedy movie. Widescreen, digital sound. Okay, next up we have Return to Oz. This is really cool. I love how dark it is. I believe this is widescreen, which is good. Alright, next up we have The Boy Who Could Fly. Now, I watched this when I was very young, and I remember liking it, so I'm going to go back and watch it again, but I haven't yet. Won't be long, and I'll give it a go. I believe that's pan and scan and digital sound. Oh, this was terrific, this one. American Me. This movie is really cool about a teenager who grew up always knowing crime and just constantly being locked up. He gets attacked in juvenile hall and defends himself and ends up in long-term stay. Becomes a gang leader, and it's about him adjusting to normal life again. It's a really, really good film. Really good. This wasn't bad. It took a different direction. It starts off, it's very much like a Dangerous Minds kind of film or something like that. But then it just completely goes off track with some Army Squad and Navy SEALs. And the line on the back is actually perfectly put. Dangerous Minds meets Steven Seagal. And that's a really good way to put it. This is widescreen and AC3, I believe. Alright, next up we have Flight of the Intruder. This is a pretty common one I've come across. I think this is just pan and scan. Oh no, look, right there, widescreen edition. So yeah, I'll get around to watching that. Danny Glover, Brad Johnson, William Dafoe. I wonder if he dies in this one. Next up is Silk Stockings. I won't say I love this movie, but some of the songs in this are fantastic. Check out this one.
Today, to get the public to attend a picture show, it's not enough to advertise a famous star they know. If you want to get the crowds to come around, you gotta have glorious Technicolor, breathtaking CinemaScope, and stereophonic sound.
The customers don't like to see the groom embrace the bride unless her lips are scarlet and her mouth is 5 feet wide.
In glorious Technicolor, breathtaking CinemaScope, or
Cinerama,
VistaVision, or
Superscope, or
Tadeo,
and
stereophonic sound, and stereophonic sound.
Well, there's a sample of it anyway. I can't play the whole thing, and that's a really good example of why I like these old school movies, especially the later ones that came out. Okay, next up we have The Duelist. I've already got this standard version, but I always wanted to get the widescreen one, and I stumbled upon this. I believe this is the American pressing, yes. So that's pretty cool. Nice Paramount early 90s press. Apollo 13, the signature edition, to continue on my signature collection. This is an awesome pressing with commentaries with Ron Howard, making of Bill Paxton home movies of going to space school and flying in the Vomit Comet. This is sealed, but I will crack it open because I don't like keeping sealed discs. Alright, that's the pickups. Now let's get on to box number 6, H, I, and J. Okay, kicking off, we have a pretty dark one, but a really great film. Just one that gets you thinking. When I first saw this back in 1998, I think it was, 97, well, it blew my mind, to be honest with you, because I hadn't really faced many issues that happen in America. It's not my day-to-day life like it is over there. It's an interesting film, widescreen with digital sound, which is good. It's not one I'd watch often, but I'm glad to have it in there. Okay, next up we have Highlander. This is the THX, AC3 widescreen, what is it? Deluxe widescreen collection edition. I won't say I love this movie, I do like it though. Yeah, this is a wonderful presentation of it. CAV pressing, I think. Trifold with real detail into the art. I really love the 3D sword with the text, kind of embossed. Next up we have Highway to Hell, which is a kind of a comedy horror. Yeah, B-grade comedy horror with Chad Lowe, Rob Lowe's little brother, in it. Sadly, this is just pan and scan, I think. But it is digital sound. Alright, we have the Hindenburg Sadly, everyone knows how this ends, but you do learn a lot of details, like how they couldn't use helium, they had to use hydrogen because helium was banned by the US when it came to exporting it to Germany, and hydrogen is extremely flammable. They would be very tight. Just a devastating stroke of nature, really. Yeah. It's widescreen with digital sound, which is good. It's a good presentation. Next up with History of the World Part 1. I think, yeah, that's widescreen. That's good because I found out a couple of my Mel Brooks films are pan and scan, so I'm going to look into getting upgrades. But yeah, this is a good widescreen, lovely pressing of History of the World Part 1. I do like this movie. This one and Silent Movie were the two kind of were the two movies I discovered when I started looking up Mel Brooks that I didn't know about already. I already knew about the basic Young Frankenstein, and I knew about Blazing Saddles, Spaceballs, Robin Hood. All of Mel Brooks' movies are great, timeless comedy. Next up we have Holy Man. I think I got this just because it was a late release. I think what is this, 98? It's a good pressing, and my partner's a fan of Eddie Murphy, so I thought I'd just keep it, And yeah, although it's a widescreen AC3, it's not one of my favourite films. Oh, here's a classic. Sadly, again, pan and scan. I really would love to get the widescreen version of this. James Caan, it was the reason why I got it, but it's a fantastic movie if you haven't seen it. Even if you're not a big James Caan fan, this is one of the best Nicolas Cage films ever made. Really good plot, high suspense, and classic Cageisms. When Cage goes off, he really goes off, and he does it well in this. Yeah, like I said, pan and scan sadly, but digital sound at least. Good movie though. This is another good one I've kept because it's just a good one on its own merit. This is directed by Clint Eastwood, Honky Tonk Man, and it has his son Carl Eastwood. It's a story about him suffering cancer while still performing, and the story of an old aging cowboy. This is also sadly pan and scanned, but it does have digital sound, which is good. And the soundtrack is really good. The music is really good in this too. So yeah, worth checking out if you like Clint Eastwood movies. Hoodlum. This is often in many people's collection. This is AC3 and widescreen, and not a bad little old school gangster film about the lottery, and it has Tim Roth in it. Although it has a slightly disappointing ending, it's still worth a watch, and I'm glad I'm keeping it. I'm going to watch this again one day, I reckon. Oh, this is a lovely little movie with Walter Matthau. I love Walter Matthau movies. This is House Calls, and has Glenda Jackson in it, who plays a woman who breaks her jaw. This is sort of like an episode of House, actually. She breaks her jaw, and the other doctor who was operating on her was using a very outdated method. So he walks past and goes, "Oh, I can fix that, just lickety-split." And gets in trouble with the doctor's authorities because you're not allowed to take another doctor's patient. And it goes on from there, and he builds a relationship up with the patient, and yeah, it's a lovely film. A really sweet movie, and not one of the classics of Walter Matthau, but yeah, just, if you like Walter Matthau movies, it's a very enjoyable film. Every Man and His Dog has this. This is the letterbox version, but just with digital sound. This is another classic directed by John McTiernan, and it stars Sean Connery, of course, and Alec Baldwin, James Earl Jones. This is still a lovely pressing. Great movie too. It's a good movie to chuck on a Saturday afternoon or something like that. I still haven't watched this yet. I got this because it was part of a bundle, and I knew that I would eventually want to watch it. I usually have a rule where I don't load a disc into my collection until I've watched it, but I have broken the rule a couple of times, and this is one of the times. I'll get around to watching it one of these days. It's more of a teenage horror, I guess, going by the trailers anyway. Alright, we have some I Love Lucy stuff now. This is the Criterion Collection I Love Lucy. Has some of her greatest hits episodes. Some may contest whether they are or not, but I think they're good enough to be in a collection of the greatest hits, and it follows up quite nicely with Volume 2 as well. And although they're not technically connected, this one isn't Criterion, it definitely fills in a lot of the gaps that are missed on the first greatest hits. So yeah, it's really cool. Old school comedy, Peter Sellers did some pretty strange films during the 70s, and this is definitely one of them. I Love You, LSB, Toklas. Toklas? This isn't one of his best films, but it's not terrible either. As far as his other Peter Sellers films that he did during the 70s, this is one of the better ones, I think. Sadly, it's not widescreen, but that's okay. I Want to Hold Your Hand, produced by Spielberg. That's cool, I didn't know that. Okay, so yeah, I Want to Hold Your Hand was his first movie he made before he did Back to the Future. And as a Beatles fan, I had to get this because I watched this once when I was maybe 12 or 13, and then never watched it again until I got it on Laserdisc, and it was better than I thought. Sadly, this is pan and scan, and it's analog sound. It's a good movie, but not as good as anywhere near as Back to the Future. I guess like the Wachowski brothers, I like to check out films they did before they did their big epic. Alright, next up we have Iceman, and this is sort of like Encino Man without the comedy, but very realistic in the way of how it would probably pay out. Yeah, it's a good movie. The lead character reminds me a lot of Chris Pratt. I'm not talking about the caveman, I'm talking about the scientist that looks after the caveman in the movie. Good movie though, really worth checking out. Right, next up we have the widescreen version with digital sound. Yep. And I got this because I'm a fan of Kevin Kline in A Fish Called Wanda. And I thought, hey, this sounds like a funny premise of a movie, and it's directed by Frank Oz. Give it a go. And I must say, Joan Cusack blew me away in this film. I love the Laserdisc reference in there, which was good. And yeah, not a terrible film, so I'm going to keep it. Yeah, one I'll go back to, especially for Joan Cusack. She was very funny. In Cold Blood. This is a retelling of the famous Truman Capote story about a very sad night when a whole family got murdered during a robbery. It shook up America a lot back then. That was the day when America started locking their doors, as they say. Okay, next up we have the famous Independence Day, and yes, it's got one of those covers that I was talking about in the last episode. It has the a lenticular extra on it. I don't know if that's meant to come with every copy, or I don't think I've seen that in any other copy. I don't mind a bit of Independence Day, bit of cheesy action, you know. You know what you're always getting when you're watching a Roland Emmerich film. AC3, Dolby Digital, widescreen. It's not a great pressing, you know, but it's okay. Raiders of the Lost Ark. I really love this movie on Laserdisc. I really wish they had made another one in AC3 or DTS. Nonetheless, you know, as they said, Spielberg films were really hard to get onto AC3 because he was a big DTS supporter. You can even see right up to the details of when she has "I love you" written on her eyelids. You know, I could never see that on the VHS version. I've also got the other two as well. This is Temple of Doom. This is a very common disc, so a lot of you have seen these around. Widescreen, digital sound. Didn't even have a THX rating. Would have been nice if they put a little bit more effort into the Indiana Jones series like they did with the Star Wars. Indiana Jones Last Crusade. This one definitely should have had a THX and a Dolby Digital release, but yep, just standard Dolby Surround, you know, and or digital sound as I call it. And yeah, widescreen. Nonetheless, the picture's fantastic. Really nice pressing. Oh, this was a really cool movie. This is The Inner Circle, about a projectionist who's really good at his job and gets hired by Stalin's staff to project films for Stalin and his inner circle. And this was all during World War II, and there's some interesting stuff about cinematography, about projections. I learned a lot. It was a great film, good storyline, and yeah, nice pressing. This is widescreen with digital sound as well. I also really love this actor. He was great in Amadeus. Okay, next up we have Inner Space. I think this is, no, it's widescreen. This is one of the, I used to rent this video at least 10 times because I just loved it. And I should have bought it, but never did, but now I do, which is good. Yeah, Martin Short is absolutely hilarious in this. Dennis Quaid is lovable. Meg Ryan is sweet. It's directed by Joe Dante, who made, I believe it's directed by Joe Dante. Yeah, Joe Dante, who did the Gremlin films. And the special effects are pretty good. Good film. I think I just talked about this before, where you get sick of explosions. So Iron Eagle 1 is over there. Iron Eagle is a great movie too, with Lou Gossett Jr., which is about a kid who loses his dad and wants to fly over there and rescue him, and has done so many hours in a simulator, so feels he's able to do it. And Lou Gossett Jr. plays this character called Chappie, and he's in all the movies. Every single Iron Eagle movie is Chappie, but I really enjoyed the first one, but then the rest of them just took a big dive, not only in storyline and special effects and stuff like that, but also in effort. It just felt like there was no more plane things, and a lot of the plane scenes that were fantastic. In the first movie, there's a great Cessna Ace race that a guy is racing a plane versus a dirt bike. And yes, it's ridiculous, but there's some amazing flight things, and they all would have had to be done in real life. It came from Hollywood, with Dan Aykroyd and John Candy and Gilda Radner, Cheech and Chong. This is a really good film if you want to learn about old school horror, old school movies. It's a movie with the right intentions. It really wants to introduce you to, classic monster films and classic special effects, and showing off how movies have developed over the years, but some of the sketches in it just really weren't that funny, especially the Dan Aykroyd part. Gilda Radner's lovely in this. Here's a classic, The Italian Job. This is Michael Caine, directed by Peter Collinson. Widescreen, digital sound. It's a fantastic movie about a heist that involves a fantastic, long, extended car chase that involves the three minis driving through all sorts of different landmarks around Italy. Oh, another really good one. This is It's a Wonderful Life. One to chuck on each Christmas time, of course, but you don't have to limit yourself to that. If you haven't seen it, don't wait till Christmas to watch it. Although it really does inspire the season, so to speak. It reminds you about Christmas being about family and the ones you love. It's a gorgeous film. And, James Stewart's favourite film that he ever was in. Frank Capra's favourite film he ever made. This isn't the best pressing, but it's widescreen, which is good. It has some special features, like a special thing where Frank Capra discusses the cast and crew. If you sent off some money and got that nice, lovely poster, which would have been cool, eh? Of course, Jackie Brown is next with De Niro and Samuel Jackson, Bridget Fonda. But it's Pam Grier, though, that absolutely steals the show in this film. She is amazing. The strength that Tarantino gave her character and the way that she was able to perform it was fantastic. It's a widescreen Laserdisc. Really good to go back on. Speaking of interesting to go back on, I would love to see Jay Leno do another one of these for nowadays and see the differences between America and the American dream and how much it's changed from whenever this was made, 1986, to maybe we'll do one in 2026. This was an interesting film, an interesting reflection upon America during that era. Yeah, I think it's actually pretty cool. That isn't pan and scan, nor is it even digital sound, I don't think. No. Alright, next up we have Jerry Maguire with Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise has a knack of choosing really good movies he's in, even though I'm not a fan of the man himself. He just has a tendency of choosing movies that I always want to watch and I really enjoy. And this was one of them, Jerry Maguire. Renee Zellweger's great too. That little kid, of course. And yeah, Cuba Gooding Jr., the energy in the film was spot on for the character that he was playing. Widescreen release with digital sound. Next up we have Jimmy Hollywood. This is a strange one. I've kept this because I love Joe Pesci, and I think he's fantastic in just about everything he does. I've never seen a movie where I've gone, hey, Joe Pesci was bad in that. Christian Slater, on the other hand, it just really confuses me. I know this is the kind of movie that it's a little bit different, and they tried to use some different type of characters and stuff like that, and the plot line's pretty cool, and I love all the movie trivia in here. It's about a actor who's looking to make it in Hollywood still, even though he's getting quite old and losing his looks and stuff like that. He has billboards set up on bus stops, but then witnesses what he believes to be a murder, and it goes on from there. Joe versus the Volcano, the first of the 3 Meg Ryan Tom Hanks films. This was probably the funniest out of the 3 of them. Sleepless in Seattle's definitely the most romantic and well written. You Got Mail's the most modern. This is widescreen, digital sound, and a good movie. Hey, this is a bit of fun. Johnny Carson Show. This is like a greatest hits of the Johnny Carson Show. I love the classic comedy, and Johnny Carson was a fantastic host, obviously, because he was around for so long. How could he be that bad? It breaks it up into different eras. Each side of the disc is like a different 10-year period of Johnny Carson, which is amazing when you consider how much work was scrunched up into that. You know, you've got 60s and 70s, then you got 70s and 80s and 90s, and a special final show. Yeah, this is really good because there's some funny scenes in this, some really sweet moments, especially when Johnny Carson was leaving and how much he had touched and made a difference to America. This is digital sound, but it's, of course, the pictures all over the place because of different eras of television that came out. But it's a lovely pressing, and as far as collecting some classic American history as far as television goes, hey, Johnny Carson, Ed Sutherland's the way to go. Alright, next up we have Johnny Mnemonic. This is sadly pan and scan, I think, but it's got digital sound. This was so funny having Dolph Lundgren as the preacher and stuff like that. Yeah. Oh no, widescreen presentation. The difference is this is missing the extra scenes that were in the Japanese version. I think that's the one you really want to get. Alright, next up is Junior. Okay, so this is Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito, and yes, Arnold Schwarzenegger gets pregnant in this movie. But I guess he really trusts Ivan Reitman. Having said that, chicks love this movie. My partner loves it. My friend's partner loves it. They just love the idea of men getting pregnant. I think it's because Arnie has such a, rugged, manly reputation. To see him doing the ultimate 180 and getting pregnant makes the women. Widescreen and digital sound. There's a scene in that movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger is having a dream and sees his face superimposed in an old-fashioned CG style onto a baby, and it is the stuff of nightmares. Okay, moving on. Jumping Jack Flash. This is pan and scan with analog sound, sadly. You can even spot John Lovitz and Phil Hartman in there. Next up. Oh, Judgment Night. This isn't a bad little film. Great soundtrack. I remember I heard the soundtrack years before I'd seen this film. But the film's okay. It's just Jeremy Piven's in it, and I just can't stand Jeremy Piven. He is such an annoying character. Every single movie he's in, he always does stupid things that even some of the dumbest human beings would not do. It's still not a bad movie about some guys who are on their way to a football game and then take the wrong turn and end up in the bad neighborhood, and one thing leads to another, and end up getting chased by a gang led by Dennis Leary. It's widescreen with digital sound, and it's an okay pressing. The picture's a bit medium grade, nothing special. Okay, next up is the Jurassic Park stuff. This is the making of, with extras including exciting additional footage never before seen on TV, early go-motion animated dinosaur tests, ILM's first computer animated dinosaur tests, home video footage of early pre-production meeting and location scouting with Steven Spielberg and his creative team, storyboards, behind the scenes. I mean, this is both sides of the disc in a making of. That's pretty full on as far as, going to the effort. That's up there with Hearts of Darkness. Anyway, so this is just digital sound. It's a making of, so I'm not too sure if it's widescreen or not. Hosted by James L. Jones. Yeah, not bad. Alright, Jurassic Park, the DTS version. Lovely gatefold. And DTS is fantastic. It really gives the subwoofer a good workout. When you want to really give your subwoofer a good thrashing, Generations on AC3, I think it is. Yeah, the AC3 version of Generations and this. Both just poor. There's another version of this. That's the Dolby Digital one that both me and you, Rodney, have been chasing after for some time now. I've got the box set the box set digital sound letterbox version CAV. I mostly watch it on DTS though, just for that kick and subwoofer. And this one also has a good subwoofer kick as well, but scares the daylights out of my children. Mostly the smaller dinosaurs scare the kids, funny enough, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, Lost World. I put it up. I got all the Jurassic Parks together because, you know, when my son's looking for a Jurassic Park, you know, because it's his favourite movie, I like him to be able to find all things together, you know. Next up is Jury Duty with Pauly Shore. This was one of his, you know, comedies when he was on that bandwagon during the early 90s, up until he did, I think it was Biodome that officially killed his career. But during that time, this one and In the Army Now, and I think there was another one where he was on the farm. I've got it here somewhere. Were quite popular at the time, believe it or not. Karate Kid 1 is on Blu-ray, but Karate Kid 2 is here. I've also got it on Blu-ray as well. Yeah, you know, Pat Marisha. This is a silly movie, especially the ice chopping scene. Go back and watch the ice chopping scene again. It's absolutely ridiculous. Next up, we have a Japanese release. This is the next Karate Kid. Dolby Digital, widescreen, I believe. No, this would be pan and scan, probably because it's Columbia. Anyway, moving on. Here's a good one. The Keep. Widescreen version as well, which is good. A bit tricky to get the widescreen version of The Keep, especially in good condition. The disc is perfect, but the cover isn't great, I'll be honest with you. But the movie's really good, really spooky if anyone likes sci-fi stuff. And yeah, next up we have Killing Zoe. I added this to the collection back when I was first getting into Laserdisc, so to be honest, it's been so long since I've watched this movie, I don't remember it anymore, but I remember it being good, and I've always liked Eric Stoltz. Next up is Kiss Me Stupid, which we've already done in the pickup videos. Yeah, Kim Novak steals the show, but it's just a funny premise of this really overly jealous husband who's trying to stop anybody looking at his wife, and then suddenly, of all people, Dean Martin rolls into this little town. And okay, next up is The Killing, Stanley Kubrick collection, of course. Yeah, not my favourite of his films, but really good one nonetheless.
Alright, sit down, I'm gonna earn it.
Okay, nearly done for this video. I know there's been a lot of this video, hasn't there? Alright, Merry Christmas, by the way, if you're watching this during Christmas time. Kindergarten Cop, Arnold Schwarzenegger, very funny movie. He gets the sidekick, the one who's also a teacher, who was in Penelope Ann Miller is the name of the actress. That's it. Thank you, back cover. And she was really quite funny in this film. My partner really likes the kids and the interaction of the kids. I guess it fits into that same whole thing as Junior did, you know, women. Okay. Oh, second last disc, Kingpin. Yeah, so Farrelly brothers, isn't it? Yeah, Bobby and Peter Farrelly. One of them directed movie 43, so they will no longer be in my good books ever again after sitting through that monstrosity. But having said that, this is actually an okay film. It's kind of sweet. Randy Quaid was kind of decent in this. What's with all the messages? Okay, one last disc, and I'll go check what all those messages are about. Okay, Kinjite, where Charles Bronson beats someone up with a giant black dildo, which was quite funny at the start. Yeah, it's just another canon Charles Bronson movie. It's exactly what you expect, but it does kind of make Japanese men look like real pervert. But yeah, not a bad little film. Just the usual canon kind of stuff, you know. This is digital sound. No, this is analog sound and pan and scan. So, yeah, very basic. Alright, so that's it for this year. Thank you for sticking with me for the first 6 episodes. Next, we'll get on to the bottom half of the cabinet, and we'll continue on with hardware every second episode. Coming up, we're going to be having a look at some laser active stuff, and here's a little taste now. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks a lot. Happy New Year. Bye.
Welcome to Gateway Islands. Gateway Islands is a group of islands artificially built as a huge amusement land. Enjoy yourself with the amusement machines that implement state-of-the-art technology. Now we will take you to Rocket Coaster, the most thrilling machine we have here.